We're now moving on to getting phones registered. A quick word about the phone type in the lab. You have 7965 phones in the lab, and at this stage in the volume 1 it doesn't really matter what phone you're using, but I would make provisions for having some hardware phones for you to practice. Definitely with the core routing and a lot of the features, life is a lot easier to use a hardware phone, a physical phone, as opposed to running on soft clients. For example, plus dialing, a big feature of the core routing section in our volume 1 and 2, is not, you cannot test it properly from using IP Blue, and so IP Blue or any third-party client such as Xlite isn't going to be sufficient for you to prepare fully for the lab, and strongly recommend, if you don't have your own pod and you're using rack rental, that you have a Cisco router, details of which can be found on proctorlabs.com. Our webpage will provide the configuration for you if you are using Proctor Labs for rack rental, and getting at least 3 7961 or 62, or if you can afford it, 65 phones for your preparation. You'll need a 7960 phone for your PSTN phone. So as a minimum, having one 7960 and 3 7965 or 62 or 61 is going to be required when you do the core routing section. You can't really rely entirely on soft clients. But in this lab it doesn't really matter. I'm going to just show you my IP Blue getting registered, but most of the work is going to be requiring that we have a physical phone. So we've gone through and put all the phones in the right VLAN based on Lab 1 in Volume 1. And so right now we have an option of using auto registration, or so auto registration, what that means is we go to our primary core manager, which is our subscriber. The primary core manager is the one on top of the list in the core manager group, and we go in and configure an auto registration range. Use something that's not being used. So if you have extension 1000, 2000s and 3000s in use, then use something else. Use 1 through 50, something that you can easily identify by looking at a phone that this is not properly configured. Now, here's the problem. In the CCIE voice blueprint, you have a mixture of protocols potentially. Item number 2 says implement and troubleshoot skinny endpoints. In the blueprint this is. Item number 3 says implement and configure SIP endpoints. So potentially you could have some phones registered to core manager, or CME for that matter, using skinny, and some phones registered using SIP. It could mean that all your phones are skinny in one lab, and God forbid you see the lab again, you fail the lab and you have a second attempt. It does happen from time to time. People do fail the lab every now and again. Okay, and then whereas you had all skinny phones in lab attempt number 1, you could have all SIP phones in lab attempt number 2. So be prepared for both. But my point is, if you have a mixture of protocols, I don't think auto registration is the answer, because what could happen is you could have a SIP phone potentially already with the correct firmware, do a firmware upload to skinny because the auto registration has been enabled, and the auto registration protocol under system enterprise parameters is skinny. So that means that potentially you can have all your phones are going to register using skinny, and you're going to be inadvertently uploading firmware without you knowing about it. So what I suggest is one or two things. If you have a mix of protocols, either shut down all the interfaces to which the SIP phones are connected, check the auto registration protocol skinny, that is the default, and then enable auto registration. Only your SIP phones have power at this point in time. They're going to all register. Once that's taken place, then change the order registration protocol to SIP, you'll have to restart your TFTP and Call Manager services on the sub and pub, or you could equally just restart the box, util system restart from the command line, and then bring up the SIP phone interfaces. The skinny phones are already registered, so they're not gonna, as long as you don't reset them. Well, they're already registered. They're already in the database. You can't do a firmware upload inadvertently. They've already got their registration. They're already in the database. So you change the auto registration protocol to SIP, bring up the SIP phone interfaces, and they're going to auto register using SIP. That's one way. Now that would be good if you had, say, more than 10 phones. But given that you only have a handful of phones in the lab, it's probably better for you to manually add the phones, going from device, phone, add phone. The downside to that being you'll have to manually put the MAC address in, and then the phone type, and then the device protocol, in no particular order that is. Okay, so there's the potential that you fat finger the MAC address, or incorrectly choose the protocol or phone type. But I think that's probably going to be quicker, given that you only have a handful of phones in the lab. Now, if you didn't have a mix of protocols, all the phone protocol, let's say, was skinny or SIP, then by all means, auto registration is the way forward. Okay, it's only if you have a mix of protocols is it kind of cumbersome. You're gonna, by the time you have managed to shut down all the interfaces and restarted the box, you could have just added the phone's MAC address in the database. So only if you have a mix of protocols, avoid auto registration. If you have all phones using the same protocol, then go ahead, just check the auto registration protocol. If you got to change it, restart the world, and then go to System, Call Manager, and then enable auto registration there by defining a number range to be used, which will be allocated to the phones on a first come first served basis. Now, auto registration does not mean the phone, the telepathy feature of Call Manager isn't out yet. Call Manager doesn't know that this is HQ phone 1, this is an extension number, this is his CSS, this is his device pool. That feature's not out back there, 3750 in the Ether switch module. We're not really going to be doing anything with these phones besides just getting them registered. So, they are 7960s, but don't be concerned by that. We put the protocol in. It's going to be skinny in this case. We're doing our skinny phones. We put the MAC address of the phone. How we get it from the HQ site is we do a show CDP neighbor detail, gives you the MAC address, gives you the phone type too, so use the detail keyword. We'll copy that MAC address. Don't be typing anything. Every time you touch the keyboard, there's potential for errors. So rather than typing 12 characters in the MAC address, copy paste once. Okay, we put the MAC address in, and then we'll have to put in the device pool setting, HQ obviously in HQ. Phone button templates a mandatory setting, just use the default at this stage. And for skinny, you'll just have to set the security profile, and we're not using any security in the lab, so non-secure profile. So I've pre-configured these phones. So then we go to HQ phone 1. It's very useful to put a description in too, so then by hour 6 when your head's spinning, you can see exactly what this phone is, as basically the caller ID. The line text label, if you didn't want to show 5001 by button 1, rather than that, and you want to show John Doe, then you will just put John Doe or sales or support or whatever it is in the line text label. The external number mask, this is going to be using the banner at the top of the phone, the black banner bar at the top of the phone. By default, it will just show the DN. What we're doing here is we're going to use 212394, and the X's mean that we're going to be inheriting the 5001 from the DN field. Now, I could just put in 5001, no difference. The reason where the X's comes in handy is if you're using the bulk admin tool to, let's just say, change 100 phones or 1,000 phones and be able to put the external number mask in one command, then this is my loopback address. This is my fast Ethernet here, my Ethernet interface. So I've just selected a MAC address. I've just used the VPN one. I've put in the TFTP, primary secondary core manager. SRST is not required. And what I've done also is set the phone type. Okay, the phone tab here, I've made it a 7961 HQ phone 1 connected to the 3750, which is in Michigan, Proctor Labs. Is that you can't answer the phone, so we ask you to auto answer with speakerphone. We also ask you to make it ring a couple of times before the auto answer takes place. So we have to go to the service parameters, and under the service parameters, do Control F, auto answer time is 10 seconds, which is approximately 2 rings. We can't actually, we can try ringing it now. Ring 5001 from the IP Blue client. Every now and again, it works. 5001. You can see here the alerting name. That's 2 rings, and it says connected, so the auto answer did work. If I press the information button, I'll see the codex G711 ULO. I'll have to obviously address that. This is simulating a call over the WAN. We'll obviously want to change that to be a low bitrate codec, which we'll deal with in a little while.